A single battery order just broke every record in history. Not for lithium, not for anything the energy world had seen coming. One deal for 60 gigawatt hours of a battery that most experts had dismissed as completely unrealistic just 2 years ago. To give you a sense of what 60 gigawatt hours actually means, it is enough energy to charge every smartphone on Earth at the exact same time. Every single one, all at once. The company behind it is not some new startup that got lucky. It is the biggest battery manufacturer on the planet. And the material at the heart of this battery is so ordinary, so cheap, so completely unremarkable that when you hear what it is, you will probably laugh. It is the same element you shake onto your pasta before dinner. A battery built around table salt just became the most important technology story in energy right now. And the journey that led here is 30 years of science, billion-dollar bets, and one material problem that stumped researchers for 4 straight decades. If you are the kind of person who loves stories like this, please hit the like button right now. These videos take a serious amount of time and effort to put together, and subscribing means you will never miss the next one. There is a lot to unpack here. By the end of this video, you will understand what made this possible, why the world took this long to get here, and why the element sitting in your kitchen might quietly be one of the most powerful things on Earth. The battery that took over the world. To understand why this salt battery story matters so much, you first have to understand just how completely lithium took over everything. And to do that, you have to go back to a world before it existed. Before lithium dominated portable power in the early 1990s, the batteries people relied on were heavy, bulky, and drained quickly. A single camcorder battery lasted about an hour. Laptops were thick slabs that barely survived a meeting. The idea of a phone that could fit in your pocket and run for an entire day seemed genuinely far off. These older batteries stored a fraction of the energy that lithium could hold, and weighed far more doing it. The jump to lithium was not a small step forward. It was a complete reimagining of what a battery could be. Energy storage roughly tripled compared to what came before. Devices shrank, phones became smart, electric cars became real. The wireless earbuds sitting in people's ears, the laptops thin enough to slide into a sleeve, the electric vehicles quietly humming down highways. None of that happens without lithium chemistry making it possible first. Lithium works so well because of 2 things working together. First, lithium particles are among the smallest and lightest of any element used in battery chemistry. Being so light means you can pack an enormous number of them into a very small space. More particles packed in means more energy stored per kilogram. Second, lithium has a very strong natural drive to push electricity through a circuit. Put those 2 properties together, and you get a battery that for 30 years, no competing chemistry could seriously challenge. So the world kept building on it. Factories scaled up. Billions of dollars flowed in. Researchers fine-tuned the same chemistry year after year. And somewhere along the way, the entire industry stopped looking left or right and just kept charging straight ahead down the lithium road. When something works that well for that long, people stop asking whether something better might be out there. They stop funding the alternatives. They stop questioning the foundation. And that is exactly when the cracks start forming. When the cracks got too big to ignore. In 2016, Samsung released a flagship phone called the Galaxy Note 7. The reviews were excellent. Pre-orders poured in. And then within weeks, the phone started catching fire. In pockets, on airplane seats, on bedside tables while people slept. Airlines banned the device outright. Samsung eventually pulled the entire product line, a disaster that cost the company $5 billion and became one of the most talked about product failures in consumer electronics history. Most people blamed Samsung directly, and Samsung did make specific engineering mistakes in how they designed that battery. But here is what the news coverage mostly missed. The underlying danger was never unique to that phone. It was sitting quietly inside every lithium battery ever made. The liquid inside a lithium battery that carries energy back and forth between the two ends of the cell is made from materials that are flammable. Not just a little flammable, genuinely combustible under the right conditions. If a battery overheats, gets punctured, or gets charged too aggressively, that liquid can ignite. When one cell catches fire, the heat it throws off raises the temperature of every cell sitting next to it. Those cells ignite and heat the cells around them. It spreads like dominoes falling inside a sealed box, each one triggering the next faster than any cooling system can respond. Engineers have a clinical name for it. Everyone else just calls it a disaster. This is not a problem that has faded with better engineering. In 2026, lithium battery fires have overtaken electrical fires as the leading cause of fatal fires in New York City. That is not a statistic from a decade ago. That is the current reality in one of the most technologically advanced cities in the world. Then there is what cold weather does to a lithium battery, and this one hits harder than most people realize. When temperatures drop below freezing, the charged particles inside a lithium cell stop moving smoothly and start depositing themselves on the inner walls of the cell as tiny, jagged metallic spikes. Those spikes grow a little more with every charge cycle. If they grow long enough to connect the two ends of the battery, they create a short circuit. That short circuit generates heat almost instantly, and heat inside a lithium battery, as we just covered, tends to go in one direction only. Even when those spikes never grow large enough to cause a short circuit, the performance hit in cold weather is severe. At freezing point, a lithium battery typically loses between 20 and 40% of its total range. Not because anything broke, just because the temperature outside dropped. For someone driving an electric vehicle in Canada, in Norway, in northern China, that can mean losing over 100 kilometers of range on a winter morning when they need every kilometer they can get. These problems were not hidden. Engineers documented them for decades. They built smarter thermal management systems. They wrote better battery management software, but the core chemistry stayed the same. And the reason it stayed the same brings us to a vulnerability that had nothing to do with the science at all. Between 2020 and 2022, the price of the key lithium raw material went up by a factor of 8. Not 8%, 8 times more expensive in just 2 years. Then in 2023, the market swung the other way, and prices collapsed by more than 70% in a single year. The industry had built the foundation of the clean energy future on top of a commodity that behaved like a meme stock, completely unpredictable, totally outside anyone's control. For car companies trying to hit price targets, and for governments trying to build energy independence, this was the moment the cracks became impossible to ignore. Something had to change. And it turned out the answer had been sitting in a research paper since the year 2000. The element that never got its turn. Long before lithium was on anyone's radar, scientists in the 1960s were already exploring a different element as the future of batteries: sodium. It sits right below lithium on the periodic table, behaves in a chemically similar way, and is one of the most abundantly available elements on Earth. It is literally in table salt. You can find it in oceans, in the ground, and in practically every kitchen on the planet. The first high-energy rechargeable battery ever built, by the Ford Motor Company in 1966, actually ran on sodium. It was genuinely impressive as a proof of concept, but it had a flaw that made it completely impractical. It required an operating temperature of around 300 degrees Celsius. That is hot enough to melt lead. Fascinating as a science demonstration, not something you could put under the hood of a family car. Then in 1972, a researcher named Stanley Whittingham cracked the code on making a lithium battery work at room temperature. In one move, lithium leapt ahead, and nearly all the research money in the world followed it. When Sony launched the first commercial lithium battery in 1991, the momentum was locked in. Over the following decades, more than $1 trillion flowed into lithium technology. Sodium got left on a shelf, not because anyone proved it was worse, but because the momentum was entirely pointing the other way. Sodium also had a specific technical problem that nobody could crack. Sodium particles are about 35% bigger than lithium particles. Inside a battery, those particles need to slide in and out of a storage material thousands of times without damaging it. The storage material lithium uses, a form of carbon called graphite, has perfectly and evenly spaced layers. Lithium particles fit between those layers the way a key fits a lock, clean and precise, in and out thousands of times without causing damage. Sodium particles are simply too big. Every time one tried to force its way in, it pushed the layers apart and permanently bent the structure. After just a few hundred charge cycles, the battery would be so degraded it was basically useless. That single material problem kept sodium out of serious commercial consideration for more than 40 years. Researchers kept trying. Papers kept getting published, but no one could find a storage material that sodium particles could actually live inside without eventually destroying it. Until a team in Canada stumbled onto something completely unexpected and quietly changed the direction of the entire industry. In the year 2000, researchers discovered a form of carbon that looked and behaved nothing like the graphite used in lithium batteries. Normal graphite, if you could zoom in to the atomic level, looks like a perfectly stacked deck of cards. Every layer is parallel, evenly spaced, and precisely ordered. Sodium particles are too big to slide between those cards without wrecking them. Hard carbon is the opposite of that in almost every way. It is made by heating organic material, things like plant waste, agricultural byproducts, or even glucose, to between 1,000 and 1,400 degrees Celsius inside a sealed container with no oxygen present. The carbon atoms that come out of that process are frozen in a permanently chaotic arrangement. Irregular gaps, tiny pockets of varying sizes, no neat stacking, no orderly layers, just a dense, complex internal structure full of spaces big enough to comfortably house sodium particles without breaking apart over time. For the first time in 40 years, sodium had a material it could actually work with. The problem that had stumped the world's best researchers for 4 decades had a viable answer. But a discovery in a lab and a product ready for mass production are two very different things. Hard carbon is porous. Its irregular internal structure, the very thing that makes it useful, also makes it act like a sponge for moisture. Even a tiny amount of water making its way inside a battery cell reacts with the liquid inside and creates gases that slowly destroy the cell from within. At lab scale, this could be managed carefully. At the scale of manufacturing millions of batteries for cars and power grids, it was a serious problem that needed solving completely. This is where CATL entered the story in a way that nobody else was willing to match. CATL, the world's largest battery manufacturer, committed roughly $1.5 billion over 10 years to turning hard carbon from a promising research finding into a commercially reliable product. The scale of that commitment was extraordinary for a chemistry that most of the industry was still treating as a curiosity. Their first major breakthrough was changing the surface chemistry of the hard carbon itself. The parts of the material that naturally attract and hold water were replaced with compounds that actively repel it. Their second breakthrough was even more remarkable. They developed a way to control the size of the tiny internal pockets inside the hard carbon during the manufacturing process, with precision down to the scale of a single atom. Make those pockets too small, and sodium particles cannot enter them efficiently enough to store useful amounts of energy. Make them too large, and you are wasting space that could be storing more charge. Getting that balance exactly right, and doing it consistently across a product manufactured at enormous scale, took years of work and a level of investment that most companies were simply not prepared to make. The result is a battery called the Naxtra, and what it delivers has genuinely surprised even people who were following the development closely. In a real production car, the Naxtra provides over 500 kilometers of range on a single charge, with an 80% charge taking just 15 minutes. These are not theoretical numbers from a controlled lab environment. They are performance figures from a battery already being manufactured and deployed at scale. The lifespan sets a new standard entirely. The Naxtra handles more than 10,000 full charge and discharge cycles before meaningful degradation begins. That is roughly 3 times the lifespan of the lithium iron phosphate cells it competes with most directly. If you charge this battery once every single day without a break, it would still be performing reliably after 27 years of daily use. Cold weather is where sodium does something lithium is physically unable to match. The liquid inside the Naxtra remains fluid at temperatures as low as -58 degrees Celsius. At -40 degrees, the battery still holds 90% of its full charge capacity. A lithium battery operating at that same temperature is barely functioning, losing a third or more of its range just from the cold air outside. For electric vehicle owners in northern climates, this is not a marginal improvement. It is the difference between a car that works through winter and one that fails you on the mornings when you need it most. Then there is the price, and this might be the number that changes everything. CATL is producing sodium-ion cells at around $19 per kilowatt-hour. Lithium-ion cells typically cost between $55 and $70 per kilowatt-hour. That is not a small gap. That is a fundamentally different cost structure. And unlike lithium, sodium is not concentrated in a small number of countries. No single government controls the supply. No unexpected shortage can send prices multiplying overnight. For car manufacturers trying to make electric vehicles affordable for average buyers, and for governments trying to build energy infrastructure that is not hostage to commodity swings, that stability is worth as much as the lower price itself. But here is the question everyone eventually asks. Does this mean lithium is finished? The honest answer is more interesting than a simple yes or no. 2 batteries, 1 smarter future. Sodium-ion batteries have one limitation they probably cannot fully escape, and it comes down to physics. Because sodium particles are heavier and larger than lithium particles, there is a ceiling on how much energy you can pack into a given weight. For electric aircraft, where every extra gram directly costs range and payload capacity, that ceiling matters enormously. For consumer electronics, where the battery has to fit inside a device with almost no spare volume, lithium will almost certainly stay dominant for years to come. What CATL is actually building toward is not a story where one chemistry defeats the other. It is a partnership between 2 chemistries, each deployed where it genuinely excels. They have already built an electric vehicle battery pack that divides its storage into 2 separate zones, one sodium and one lithium, with software managing both in real time. When it is cold outside and the lithium cells are struggling to deliver full performance, the sodium zone takes the load. On a long highway drive where maximum range is the priority, lithium steps up. Neither chemistry is pushed past what it does well. Both are used exactly at their best, and the car performs better than either could manage on its own. Now think back to that opening number, the 60 gigawatt-hour deal that broke every record. To put it into perspective, CATL shipped approximately 122 gigawatt-hours of total energy storage products across all of 2025. This single sodium-ion order represents roughly half of that entire year's output, for a technology that was not even in commercial production 12 months before the deal was signed. The scale of confidence that number represents is almost hard to process. And sitting underneath all of it is a lesson worth thinking about carefully. The hard carbon research that made this battery possible was published in the year 2000. The science sat in academic journals for more than 2 decades. Serious investment and real corporate attention did not surge towards sodium until 2022, almost exactly when lithium prices exploded and then crashed, and the fragility of the entire supply chain became impossible to explain away. The problems with lithium were never hidden. They were in the research literature for decades. Engineers knew about the fire risk, the cold weather limits, and the supply chain concentration. But when a dominant technology is delivering good enough results and the profits keep flowing, entire industries develop a very strong habit of not looking hard for something better. Change requires a reason, and the reason has to be bigger than the comfort of staying the same. The sodium-ion battery did not emerge from nowhere. It was in labs and research papers for over 20 years, waiting for the conditions that would finally make the world pay attention. Those conditions arrived because lithium made them arrive, by becoming too expensive, too volatile, and too geographically concentrated to ignore the alternative that had been sitting quietly right below it on the periodic table the whole time. The future of energy was in your salt shaker all along. That is the story. If this video gave you something new to think about, the like button is right there, and it genuinely helps the channel more than most people realize. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you are the first to know when the next one drops. Here is my question for you. If a sodium battery electric car cost half the price of a lithium one and worked better in winter, would you buy it? Let me know in the comments below.